we've got Jack Mulhern with us. Jack is a friend and colleague who I met about a year ago on a project in the UK on Boys in the Boat. And we've continued to work together since. That's why he's looking, hench. And
could be more, man. We'll get there.
Yeah,
that's me, not you, though.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, mate. I appreciate that. I'll put that on the market.
Yeah.
And so we've got Jack just going to talk about whatever comes across, really. I mean, we're going to talk about Boys in the Boat. I suppose what we're interested in, mate, is are you familiar with the Leeds manager got sacked today, the American guy?
No. But I'm outraged. I'm outraged and I'm disgusted. And I would say I'm surprised, but I could see this coming from a mile off.
Fair. I guess we'll leave it there. But your fury is obvious. Yeah. So I suppose starting off, like we did with Luke, really last time. What do you want to know from Jack? Where do we start?
Well, I've already said, is this going to be a spoiler? And we've realised it's not. So I came in for like one day of the filming just to help out. So I might have met you really briefly, or you might have seen me loitering around probably by the snacks. Is where I'm normally.
The snacks that I couldn't eat.
I know, but this is where I'm going. So how, I want to know about that really. I guess, can we call it like a body transformation for this project?
I think so. Yeah. I don't think that if you stood me a year ago next to me now, it would look like the same guy.
I was going to say, I don't recognize you today from before. I'd love to talk about that really, and how you found that process really. Have you done it before?
Early on, so I'd done another movie a couple months before. I had like a crazy schedule that year. So I did a film, and then I did a limited series, and then I had a couple months, and then I left for Boys in the Boat. So the first of those projects, I'd done some crazy thing where I was like, I mean, it was more gradual, but then it got like really accelerated, and I got down to like 150 pounds or something for that. I had done that on my own. I didn't have any consultation on that, and I didn't.
Oh, wow. Like, what's your norm weight, would you say?
If I was in like good shape, normally punching weight would probably be ideally like 190 pounds, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like really good would be like 188, 87 if all things were balanced out. That's probably like the ideal weight for me. But the character was this like ghost. So I wanted to get down to this like wraith-like weight. It was difficult, but I did it. And then I did this series and I came back up to more of a mean. And when I got to Boys in the Boat, I was about probably like 190, 195 pounds or something like that. And then so we trained with Baz for the first 2 months, and he was on the whole production. And so I came to him pretty early, and I was like, this is the character. I've looked at the schedule. The actual guy during the Olympics, which seems like it's during these dates and these stretches. And we went into the schedule and we circled dates, which were 6 scenes, because the real guy worked in this pulp factory, and he had lifelong lung issues. And during the Olympics, during 2 of the races, he went into this kind of like fugue state, and he had horrible lung issues, and he had basically kind of an intense form of walking pneumonia, and he lost like 20 pounds in 2 weeks or something like that, 3 weeks during the Olympics. It's highlighted in the script. And so I went to Barry pretty early, and I was like, these are the days, this is what's happening. And the book prints, because they're athletes, obviously, those stats are taken. So the real guy's weight and height was printed in the book from when he was his race weight and his stick weight during the Olympics. And he's around the same height as me. He's maybe 6'2". I'm a little taller, maybe. So at that point, it's kind of a question of, it's just you either do it or you don't do it, because these are the numbers. They perfectly align with you. And it's like, you either go for it or you don't. So we decided to go for it. And as we got closer, kind of with a gratis period of about 3-ish weeks from the first 16, we started doing a cut, which was similar to what I'd done myself in my own weird bioengineered way on the movie. First of all, it was great to have accountability because we check in every single day. And secondly, he just could confirm some of the things that I was doing as the right way to go, but also could like dispel some incorrect notions I had and help me with some supplements and some other and hydration levels. And we kind of did like a boxing cut. So it got a lot more nuanced, the cut with him, and in such a way that we could do it, that we could reach the numbers we wanted to, but we could also monitor all my levels and keep me relatively sane through the process. So sorry for just splurging on, but yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I think as well, to probably something to highlight is having Barry there just to do it safely.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that's ideal, right? Losing loads of weight quickly, but there's ways in which to have that support and exactly that accountability and that person to go, okay, let's monitor this. And I was sort of hearing about it remotely, just because obviously we're business partners, we talk about it. Something recently about our job when looking after shows, films, whatever it is, and we look after performers. Part of our job is that we never get involved in changing your character choices. We kind of want to give you all the tools you can, so you as an actor can go, these are the character choices I want to make, and I want to be able to have the accessibility to be able to do that as well as I can, and have the tools I need. And I guess just to make that big kind of body transformation as such, to do that in a safe and as safe as possible way is really, really important to highlight. How did you feel? I think I saw you. Was I in like 2 weeks before the NB?
Is it Queen Mary at the Resi?
Yeah.
Oh man, that was the time, wasn't it? Oh my god.
You were just quiet in a corner.
That was tough because I mean, you got those scenes, but also you had a job to do in whilst preparing for that. So you know.
Yeah. So I think it's important to highlight too that we had great doubles. Some of them were Olympians. They were great guys. They were training with us almost from the beginning. But a large amount, I don't want to say all, because they definitely use some stuff on wides and things, but even then again, even some of the stuff on the wides is us. That George felt early on that a lot of the selling point of the film and the replayability of the film, if people were to enjoy it at all, would be that it was us. You know, it was us in the boat. It's in the title, right? 90%, I would say, maybe more of the rowing in the film is us. As Barry's talking about, we had to balance out with these big, the way the filming was structured is the first couple of months were largely kind of the skeleton, the story beats of the film. And then the last month maybe was just chronologically from beginning to end, race, all of the big technical set pieces. And sprinkled in towards the end, contextually, were all of these 6 scenes. It was this dual obligation of having to be in the right physique to motivate the scenes, and then also not being on death's door, so that way I could literally pull my weight in the boat when we were out on the reservoir and it's thrashing wind and it's 10-foot swells and we're trying to like hit some 40 strokes per minute or something like that as we're flying past the boats. And it was amazing. It was an incredible experience, but it was like a lot of balls to juggle at the same time. That's why it was so great to have Baz there the whole time, because whenever we would come back in between these big long sections of doing passes and things like that, he'd be right there. He would get us warmed up for the next set piece. He would make sure that like we had restocked our energy, and kept our hydration levels at a certain, appropriate level. That week felt like a year, It was, It
was because there were times when you were out there for hours. I remember a couple of 3-hour stints out there in the middle of that reservoir. And that reservoir, Luke mentioned it before, like that wind just sweeps across it, because it's like it's
high, isn't it?
Right? Yeah, so there's just this wind that just goes straight across it, doesn't it? And then it's accumulative in terms of the waves coming across. Beautiful scene.
Yeah.
Glass in the morning. Yeah. Later on, though, like so choppy. The amount of energy expended by these lot was a joke.
Yeah.
Luke, I felt especially bad for, because it was just the panic of having to steer the boat in all of the chaos, but also to be prepped at a certain spot, waiting for camera crews to be ready to take a pass. And so we'd be out in the middle of the reservoir and it would be whipping with wind and the waves would be rolling and he'd be clutching white knuckled onto some buoy, onto some slimy rope and waiting for camera crews to come out there. And then we'd have to wait additionally because every 5 seconds a plane from Heathrow would go over, and we'd be waiting for the noise to clear so that way we could do the scene. And we were covered in water too because we were doing celebrations that day too. We were splashing each other, and then they were like, all right, let's go back out. And we were in there freezing with the wind going through us. Yeah. It was intense.
I mean, you had the lovely view of Windsor Castle. Is that?
Yeah, that was, I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. Huh? Intense as you can imagine, a very epic circumstance with the waves and everything. But then also it was, for a lot of those days, it was really overcast. And I kid you not, it was, you look down to the end of the reservoir, which was whatever, a mile and a half, 2 miles off. And there was like a break in the cloud cover and these slanting sunbeams over Windsor Castle in the distance, just on the lip of the reservoir. We'd be rowing towards this mythical castle in the distance. It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
So
going back to like the bits in between, I mean, like recomposing yourself was tough, right? Because you're on a big end, like at times like a big deficit, sleep affected deficit, like and having to deliver then on set. How did you feel in those like moments when the camera cut? Did it cut? Like, did it hit you then, or was you sort of dragging it through the whole way through every day?
Well, kind of combo of both. I mean, as you know, because we talked about it a lot, what was great about it, I guess it's sort of a masochistic thing to say, but like, it wasn't just aesthetics. It was really helpful. Whenever we would do those scenes, we would dehydrate leading up to it, like you were going to a weigh-in or something. So the consequences, it wasn't the most comfortable feeling, but I didn't have to act as hard on the days because I felt terrible. You know what I mean? So every single time that we had a sick scene, we had done it in such a way where, depending upon where it was in the schedule on the day, up to the point of the filming, I was pretty much like in a room by myself, feeling incredibly uncomfortable until the scene. And then we would shoot the scene, and I barely had to try because it was there already, whatever the feeling was. And then afterwards, because I hadn't had water, I'd been on sipping for the day before leading up to it. So afterwards I would rehydrate, get ready after all the coverage was said and done. And then I would kind of be okay. I'd be back to normal again. It's not great to be on limited calories, but when you're in it, and especially given that the way that we've done it too, because we trained so hard in the beginning, and I felt like I had a good structure on me, and I didn't feel like I was wasting away because we put all the effort into kind of composing the body one way, this way, before we started the cut, that by the time we got down there and you're in it every single day, and your body's used to the game plan of how many calories you have, and you kind of micromanage it in such a way that you're not starving. You're just distributing it around throughout the day, so you never feel overly famished. Just the numbers are smaller through all sorts of little tricks. It didn't feel as desperate as it looked, except in the moments where I had to for scenes. It wasn't until I ended and I started to come out of it that I felt like, whoa, okay, that was a big cut. You know, I don't know. You can adapt to a lot of things. It's pretty crazy.
And was that different to the first time you cut? You know, like the first film that you mentioned?
Yeah, I felt a lot better because it was a different kind of like, so that was 150. This was 158, 159 is where we got to at the end. Probably hovered around 160, but like we got the number at least once, I think. It felt like a much better 160 than 150 because I had musculature on me from all of the rowing and the training before, so I felt a stable base. Like 150, when you're just cutting muscle, fat, everything, you can hear your bones grind in the joints. You know, you just feel it feels much more like I'm gonna end up in the hospital. You know, you just feel like you're on death's door, and it affects your short-term memory, and you have this horrible brain fog, and it's terrible. But 158 at kind of a more balanced macronutrient profile, you know, where I was getting enough fats and I was getting a decent amount of protein and I had the calories distributed throughout the day. Don't get me wrong, it's an extreme cut, but I felt totally fine except for the dehydration days, pretty much, which was purposeful.
Interestingly, we used because there are moments obviously where there were real bits, and like, you know, kept a close eye on Jack between scenes and stuff like that. The big trick, wasn't it? The thing that snapped you out of it was nuts, wasn't it? It was just a rice cake.
Yeah,
before you
Yeah.
ingested that first mouthful, like you could see a change. It's bizarre. It was.
Yeah. We had a bunch of little tricks to just like if I started going nose diving to just kind of get me back because we had to do the rowing. You know what I mean? It was all of these scenes were couched within this grander context of just this racing arc, and especially I don't want to say especially in my seat because every single seat is important, but stroke sets the tone. So it was like it wasn't just like I could just snap in and follow with everybody. I really had to like wake up to do it because everybody's taking the rhythm off of me and Luke and Callum.
So Jack was a stroke man, so number one in the boat. So right at the front, like everyone's following.
Okay, so you're leading the strokes, I guess, as such.
Yeah, Luke calls the rate, and then I take it up to whatever rate I think is in the ballpark. And he had a very faulty stroke meter by his feet that was attached to all these like magnetic strips beneath the seats that could take pace off. He would call me up to kind of the ballpark. But by the time we trained so much, we did, of course, train for the first 2 months, but we trained through the whole shoot. Whenever we wouldn't be filming, we would rotate in and we would train. So by the end, especially during the Olympics, everybody had kind of like a shorthand about where everybody kind of intuitively knew what pace we were at by the end, you know.
As I said, I remember the day I was there, but you guys came off and you're like, I think we were about here. Like everyone sort of could rate where, and I'm guessing that's exactly what you mean. It was like,
yeah,
I think we got about this, and it was sort of confirmed later.
Yeah.